Let's talk about most common hearing problems or homeostatic imbalances of hearing. The first will be conduction deafness. That's a pretty common condition where either ear canal is blocked or tympanic membrane is damaged or tympanic cavity ossicles are damaged. It can result from impacted earwax. Eardrum can be perforated by middle ear infection, or ossicles can be damaged by the process of otosclerosis. The second type is sensorineural deafness, and that type of damage happens to the cochlea or vestibular cochlear nerve. What can cause it? Different types of infection and sometimes tumors. Tinnitus, it's a constant ringing or clicking sound in the ears in the absence of auditory stimuli. It means when it's completely quiet, about a person would be hearing some ringing or clicking sound, and sometimes they feel lightheadedness. It also can happen due to the damage to the cochlear nerve, degeneration, sometimes inflammation of the middle ear, and sometimes it can be a side effect of certain medications. Now we go into equilibrium or balance and orientation in the space. So here is our vestibular apparatus, the part of the inner ear, everything except of cochlea. Vestibule and semicircular canals. Vestibule is responsible for static equilibrium, including utricle and saccule, and semicircular canals are responsible for dynamic equilibrium. What's the difference? Static equilibrium, it's when our body and mostly our head is moving along the straight line. It can be either up and down, like in the elevator, left or right, or sometimes back and forth, for example in the car, when you're speeding up or slowing down. And that would be sensed by structures in their vestibule, utricle or saccule. Dynamic equilibrium, it's angular movement or spinning of our head. For example, roller coasters, boat rides, and so on. And those movements will be sensed by semicircular canals. So static equilibrium. In the utricle and saccule, there are structures called macula. They monitor our head's position in the space, and it's necessary to control our posture. Inside of those structures, there are hair cells embedded in otolytic membrane. So whenever that otolytic membrane is moving, hair cells produce action potential, and the signal will be transferred through the vestibular portion of the vestibular cochlear nerve. Macula exists in the utricle, and it responds to horizontal movements. And in the saccule, a macula responds to vertical movements. So how it works? Whenever our head is moving, hair cells are banded and depolarized. That causes action potential due to increase in the amount of certain neurotransmitters, and action potential is generated and carried by the vestibular portion of vestibular cochlear nerve number 8 into the temporal lobe of our brain. Now, dynamic equilibrium. Dynamic equilibrium happens in the ampullas of the semicircular canals, widenings at the end of semicircular canals. There are 3 of them. Hair cells located there are embedded into the gel-like mass called cupula. So whenever our head produces rotational movements, those dendrites produce action potential, which runs through the vestibular cochlear nerve again to the temporal lobe of our brain.